On this planet, there's a place where there are no houses, no big buildings, no police, no wages or salaries. The residents do not curse the authorities or give help to new Russian oligarchs. In fact, they do not curse anybody. The place I'm talking about is located right in the middle of our country on the Yenisei River in Siberia. People here rely only on themselves and expect performance only from themselves. Happy people. Bakhta, population 300, has over 50 households. Of the 300 Bakhta residents, about 50 are on official payroll. They are teachers, stokers, postmen, and several watchmen. A dozen or two are pensioners. The remaining 250 live off fishing and hunting, that is, off the river and the woods. A hunter here means a professional trapper who earns his livelihood by trapping animals for their fur, mostly sable. There are not too many such trappers in Bakhta, maybe about 10. Number one is Gennady Solovyov. At this point, he is out to close the trapping season.
Работает кулемка так. Зверек подбегает, начинает крутить приваду. Давок легкий, я просто не буду руку убирать, покажу, как давит. Все, зверек попал. Вот так вот растораживать, убирать приваду. Собираешь челочки, чтобы белка не утащила или мыши. И их под верхний давок. Все. До следующего сезона.
Spring. In the 18th century, in the taiga along the Yenisei, small hamlets were built every 25 or 30 kilometers. Also, a road for horse-drawn vehicles to support the collection and transportation of furs. Later, the road was also used to deliver mail, and the hamlets became stations for mail delivery personnel. The Bakhta mail station was first mentioned in the mid-19th century. A certain Mr. Mitropolov came around with a gold prospecting party. He didn't find any gold and stayed over for the winter. In summer, Bakhta is linked with the outside world by steamships. In other seasons, it has to depend on the Russian mail helicopter. A food item in highest demand is bread. In the local bakery, they use flour, which is brought during navigation. Power supply comes from a diesel unit. For communications, there is radio. There is no telephone service. In Bakhta, heating is provided by stoves. They use firewood in their homes and coal in the kindergarten and school. The nearest doctor or policeman is at least 150 kilometers away. Every household has a couple or more dogs, and for good reason.
Без собаки охотник не охотник. Вот у этой собачки-то у ней плотная, но у нее коротковатая шерсть. Московская порода замешана. Вон Зину снимайте, с ее кобелем, он снимает. вроде на вид как красивый кобель, а работать плохо стал в тайге. По зверю не стал работать. Я его как дармоеда, конечно, не признаю как собаку. Всеми благами собачьей жизни пользуется. Сколько хочет, по сучкам бегает. Лучшие кусочки ему. А эти работяги на цепи. Вот у меня кобель, он у меня заработал, пенсионер. Сколько будет жить, столько его кормить буду. Иди, ешь. Ешь.
There are no roads around here, just the taiga all over the place. Local residents plan all their movements on the basis of the road, which is the Yenisei River. All elements of their lives hinge only on the weather and the condition of the river. While the road across the river is still open, Gennady Solovyov needs to complete a lot in preparation for next year's hunting season.
После мороза наст очень крепкий. Он, наверное, даже этот наст, наверное, нет, лосята не выдержит, но крепкий очень наст. Медведям, волкам раздолье, бедным лосям кирдык. Если снег глубокий, по такому насту он никуда не уйдет, беспомощный зверь. Пользуются все. Кто есть хотит, кто нажиться хотит, люди, имея в виду.
Whatever they need, the local residents manufacture by themselves. In April, the snow crust is frozen and you can walk over it very easily. One of the first chores for any hunter at this time is to procure boards for skis. And this process will start with selecting a suitable tree.
Трещина вот эта вот. По ней ты должен определить, прямослойная или нет. Она вот чуть-чуть витая это вправо уходит. Если она от вершины по центру так идет, это значит прямослойная. Если только чуть-чуть наискосок, это все она витая будет, пропеллер. Вот мужицкая выручка, клин. Раньше ничего не было такого. А у мужика вага и клин. Вот клин очень пологий надо делать и острый. Если ты его крутой сделаешь, клин, ты его не вобьешь, его дерево выкидывать будет. Конечно, когда умелец сделает лыжи, камус выстрогает, дерева хорошие, на них одно удовольствие ходить. Ты на этих нововятских пойдем с тобой, ты на них 15 километров пройдешь и ноги не подымешь. А я поплевывать буду идти. Если б не клин да мох, плотник давно бы сдох. Правда, если ты одним клином, ты ничего не сделаешь. А вот их несколько клинов потихоньку, хоть что, я говорю, дом можно поднять, хоть что подымешь. Вот, такая вот сила в нем. Попробуй разорвать вот так вот дерево. Это какое усилие надо. Ты волокна не нарушаешь, вот она вот как вот пошла вот так вот. Но пилораму вот ты поставил там чуть-чуть кривовато, она так вот поперек пересекла и все. А лыжа же тоненькая, ну тоненькая, там 2 миллиметра возле носка совсем. Но что там, если слой не прямослойный, она сразу же начнешь загибать, она лопнет и все. Как говорят, у человека все можно отобрать. Богатство, здоровье. Ремесло уже не отберешь. Раз ты это ремесло заимел, оно у тебя на всю жизнь. Знать ты его будешь. Согласен? Естественно, что у кого-то что-то видел, может, что-то свое добавил. Но основное всегда ты у кого-то увидишь, кто-то тебе скажет. Сам ты уже велосипеды не изобретешь. Все это до тебя изобретено и столетиями отточено.
Boards for skis are planed and shaped normally in summer, but prepared at this time of the year when it's easier to cut frozen wood. Unless you're done in time, the job will have to be rescheduled for next year. All their lives, Bakhtar residents look at the skies in the Yenisei and try to figure out what kind of clouds and or winds they'll have, and whether or not the snow will close down the road. Bakhtar has become what it is now after amalgamation. Somebody somewhere decided that it's too costly to maintain so many small hamlets and it's cheap to provide for one big settlement. So Bakhtar became a bit overcrowded. By then, the surrounding taiga had already been divided into hunting areas for local residents. Whoever came later had to do with trapping grounds situated at least 100 miles away from the village. The trappers would wait for a frosty night and start off before dawn while the snow crust remains navigable. Anatoly Blume used to be a trapper with a state farm and later became a leaseholder. There are several huts on his property. This hut is the base. It's here that brings the bulk of his supplies, food, fuel, traps. It is here that he has his radio station. In other words, it's a trapper's home where he spends most of his time. Making the hut habitable and functional is a cornerstone of preparations for the upcoming season. One of the main chores is to cut and bring firewood and ensure that it dries during the summer. You can turn it around in a couple of days and go and process the other huts.
След медведя. Вылез из берлоги уже. Вот про нас говорили, что вот нас держит. Все, он сейчас пойдет искать либо сахатов, либо оленя какого-нибудь. Хряпать-то ему надо сейчас будет.
In search of food, bears come to visit the hunters' huts. Therefore, food is stored in such steel barrels and they're kept tightly closed. You don't really need the gun, but you have to carry it around because of the bears, just in case. This other hut needs the same scope of effort: food, snow, repairs, and firewood. With this hut, everything is one big problem. Either a tree falls on it, or a bear comes in for a visit. The bear would enter the hut using the window as the entrance of choice. These holes are from his claws. The bear is a trapper's enemy number one. Crossing the Yenisei is not tantamount to just getting from the left to the right bank. The river is a big dividing line between highlands on the right bank and plains on the left bank. You may have frost on the right and a totally different weather on the left. Like southern winds bringing warmth and snow, and driving on a side tributary will become difficult. The worst is to get trapped in a frazzle.
Осенью река встает по большой воде. Потом, когда снегу наваливает, вода уходит, падает и одавляется под снегом. Получается трещина. И вот эта вода выливается уже под снег. И под снегом она не замерзает.
Gennady Solovyov's territory is 35 kilometers away from Bakhta, which is not too far. However, getting there by snowmobile may take a lot of time if thaw sets in.
Лично я всегда вывожу на первый план трудолюбие. В этом я сомневаюсь, что там кто-то со мной согласился. А вот самую плохую черту охотника, которую, вот я знаю, и мои товарищи презирают, это я могу сказать. Это жадность. Стремление любой ценой нажиться, оставлять капканы до самой оттепели, невзирая ни на что ловить самок пузатых. Настораживает только начало октября, он уже настораживается. Ему говоришь, мол, соболь-то не выходной, черный, а 2 червонца, ну моих. А так он убежит к соседу. Вот это вот таких охотников. И я презираю, и товарищи мои презирают.
Vehicles are used here as and when needed. People continue to rely on their lower extremities. Sable trapping includes 2 phases, trapping and preparation for it. The trapping season lasts for about 4 months and usually ends by February. The preparation is a never-ending process. This is the difference between professional commercial trapping and amateur hunting. A professional trapper supports and provides for its business all the year round. And at this time of the year, Solovyov is already working to support next winter's trapping season. Man has worked with wood throughout human history, mostly using a hatchet. Other tools like a saw and drill are helpful, of course, but you can survive without them. But the hatchet, though, is absolutely fundamental.
Забытые дедовские ловушки. Уже столько веков прошло, мы все ими трудами пользуемся. Ничего нового не могли придумать. Сейчас апрель месяц. Тепло, светло, комаров нету. И вот охотники, если они живут на этом деле и хотят что-то заработать, заезжают. И где-то почти что месяц находятся в тайге, обстраивают участок, продукты развозят. Кто вот такие кулемки делает, кто новые дороги делает, протясывает. В общем, трудятся люди.
Since the time an army of Cossacks conquered Siberia and until now, furs have provided a permanent and most reliable livelihoods for the local residents. In terms of food needs, they can survive without money. But to buy clothing, footwear, medicine, school textbooks for the kids, they certainly need, yes, sables.
Все. Потом осенью приду, я доделаю ее. Она будет уже кулемка. А это весенняя работа. У нас, конечно, большие участки. По 1000-то надо сделать. Всяко разное.
This is the mark to help the trapper find his trap. The marks are locally known as cuts and are made to avoid getting lost during the winter trapping. Still, it's far from clear how Solovyov will be able to find the mark within such a huge territory because the total area of his property is 1,500 square kilometers. All of Moscow needs only 1,000 square kilometers. Moscow has about 10 million residents, while here Solovyov has it all to himself.
Приехал на север в 70-м году. Меня тут же оформили, сказали собраться, выдали капканы, выдали аванс, выдали оружие. Мы с напарником, по 20 лет нам было. Посадили на вертолет, показали точку и выкинули. Ни рации, ничего тогда не было. Сказали, к Новому году прилетим. Мы вам продукты привезем, там печку, все такое. Пока у нас ничего еще этого не было. Напарник у меня что-то не выдержал всего этого дела. Я остался один. Мне, знаешь, потом в назначенное время не привезли ничего. Ну, мало ли что, авиация есть авиация. Там, конечно, это долго рассказывать. Но интересно было, как я там выживал. Это не то, что остров героев был, как они там крабов делят, да, этих скорпионов ловят. Там было настоящее выживание. Потому что выпал снег, у меня теплой одежды нет, печки в избушке нет, одни сухари. Собака, правда, хорошая попалась, которая кормила меня. Опыта охотничьего. Я-то себя считал страшно опытным охотником. Страшно опытным охотником считал себя. Но когда коснулась настоящей охоты, и оказалось, что я полный профан в охоте. Ну и вот первый мой сезон был такой. Значит, меня 5 августа забросили, 20 февраля вывезли. Такой сезон был. Но правда это. В грязь лицом я вроде не ударил.
In mid-April, Anatoly is having a visitor. His friend and neighbor, Sergei Grebenchikov, comes over. He's also a trapper, and he's over for a couple of days just to do some fishing. In April, fish wake up early in small, shallow tributaries and begin to feed greedily. It's at this time that you can catch a lot, using the simplest pole with a piece of line attached to it. The tributaries are populated mostly by the grayling.
Блин, лунку еле пролазит что-то.
Смотри, что творит.
Заклинило. Стоит что-то. Ну, вон нырял, ленок. Ленок хороший, ну. Ленок. Ну, красавица, да? Ну, это сугудай называется. Прямо снежку любого набрал, пусть он даже талый будет. Это мы вот с Толяном только 2 года назад стали делать. Это весной делают и осенью, когда еще морозов нету. Сейчас процесс пойдет изотермический, с поглощением тепла, и она промерзнет насквозь. Сейчас прямо моментально. Сейчас прямо побелеет на глазах и промерзнет. Малосольная рыба будет промороженная. Она сейчас вот уже, смотри, она, видишь, уже кромочки берутся, она уже промораживается. Ее потом как едят? Прямо ставят котелок и еще один котелок с водой. Берешь этот кусок, ополаскиваешь в воду, ешь, потому что это же соль сверху, не будешь вольную соль-то есть. Прополаскиваешь и ешь, кусаешь.
This here is grayling on a skewer. You don't scale or pry it open. You want to have the juice preserved inside. It's fine fish, a delicacy. Takes only a short while to cook. You only want to make sure the tummy doesn't burn away and the back gets properly grilled. Within a few days, the trappers would store enough fish and go back to their territories. It's getting warmer and the snow crust will soon stop to oblige. In the lowland, close by the wood outside the village, there's a lot of snow broth. Nights are still frosty. The slush freezes over and turns into a skating rink. There's no school today for the young villagers. It's holiday time. This year, 3 holidays have converged on the same date: May Day, Easter, and Winter Send-Off. In Siberia, folks treat religious and official holidays, autumn, without undue excitement, to put it mildly, and generally, anything west of the Urals is far and away from Siberians a different life, be it in Moscow or in Paris, all equally strange and impenetrable. Of all the conventional holidays, Bakhtar residents celebrate only Victory Day and New Year's Eve. Yes, and Fisherman's Day too. They subsist mostly on fish, and they are fasting nearly all year round. In other words, Easter was most welcome. Soon migrating birds will be passing by, offering a chance to break fast. The passage is opened by geese. They're very cautious. They'll never fly over buildings and need to be met outside the village. The villagers will go out to shoot the geese when the shore ice widens and there are areas of water free of ice. At this time, the principal vehicle for Yenisei residents to get around is a canoe they call vetka. It's not a conventional boat. It's chiseled out from a single tree trunk, so they also call it a single tree boat. A kind of all-wood canoe, and so lightweight that you can carry it around. The weight is its main advantage. It can be carried anywhere, over rifts, from one lake to another, or along dangerously thin ice. This spring, Anatoly Blumen decided to make a new vetka canoe. It's made of aspen. Ostyaks and Kits, the indigenous ethnic groups residing along the Yenisei, have always been renowned for their excellent craftsmanship. There are no more than about 1,000 of those indigenous hunters and fishermen on this planet. Even smaller is the number of those who know how to build canoes. Gena Tiganov is one of them. These days, Russians have also learned how to build canoes. In Bakhta, the authority on canoe chiseling is Vasily Slobodinsky. Vasily has built many canoes. He is normally required to help with the completion of the end sections. It's very important. The future of the boat and of the hunter depends on how well you do the end sections. It determines whether the canoe will sit straight or tend to tilt.
Я вот это говорю, вот.
No.
Вот полукруглую так должно быть.
To chisel out a canoe, you need a custom tool.
Это вот тесла середку выбираешь, с середины. Это еще тесла гнутая с топора сделана, но она не отрезана. Я в последнее время сейчас делаю, я сваркой обрезаю в этом месте. Ну, топор большой берем, я его сваркой срезаю, загибаю и уже потом привариваю вот в таком вот положении. Тесла хорошая. Это носы заделывать, корму. Каждый топор на свою сторону, борта подрубать где. Не подходит, теслой не везде подлезешь, да и простым топором. Вот, пожалуйста, эти топоры. Это как обычно направо, там, ну, с какой руки встанешь.
Chiseling the canoe is the next and seemingly never-ending phase. In the old days, when the nomadic Kits would travel up and down the Yenisei, they would make canoes of up to 7 meters long, accommodating up to 10 persons. To carve out a lightweight shell from this 2-meter log, you need to chisel about nearly half a ton of wood. People would be chiseling for a whole day or longer.
Пятники нужны для замера толщины лодки, ветки, чтобы когда ты долбил, не продолбить ее насквозь. Вот. И заданную толщину ты выгоняешь по этим пятникам. Длина сантиметр, 12 миллиметров.
To be more precise, the length of the center plates is determined by the width of the index finger middle joint of the man for whom the canoe is being made. The coat of paint is applied to be able to notice the stain from inside in time and also to ensure the hole is sealed tightly. It's only a break. The canoe is turned upside down and the front section is covered with damp cloth to avoid inordinate drying in the sun. Lightweight, the canoe's main advantage, also has a downside. It is too agile. For instance, you can only shoot along the longitudinal axis. If you shoot along the lateral axis, the canoe will overturn. Plane navigating is an art. Bakhtar residents learn the skill from childhood. What Solovyov is doing may look strange. He's pushing the ice around to make a clear patch of water for the geese to land. That is, if they so decide. As it happened, it was a bunch of swans that did decide.
Пошли!
Granted, they are beautiful birds, but they had to be chased away. Geese won't come around while the swans are staying over, so one has to wait, sometimes for quite a while. It's very important to know how to wait when hunting. Around these parts, they don't ever use words like kill or shoot. They always say get. They say Leo Tolstoy always had a bad conscience after a shoot. He didn't have to shoot animals or birds for food, and shooting for pleasure, like it or not, didn't tally with their concept of humanism. That's why he suffered and felt bad about it. The trapper Solovyov believes it's better not to shoot at all unless you're sure you kill, not to leave wounded birds or animals, to prevent their undue suffering. Next day, Anatoly and Gena open the canoe. That is, open the log for the boards to appear. To this end, they start warming up the boat evenly on a long fire, prior to which the head and the aft are fixed with wire to stay intact during the opening operation. The boards are developed slowly by gradually inserting increasingly long bars. Each new bar is 5 to 7 centimeters longer than the previous one. The opening operation normally lasts 2 to 3 hours. The essential thing is not to hurry, but give the wood a good chance to get well warmed up. Well, now, it's really over, after 3 full days. New canoes are protected by 2 or 3 coats of tar thinned by diesel fuel. If you're careful enough, the boat may be serviceable for 10 or sometimes even 15 years. Starting in early May, spring becomes real with the sun up in the sky until the evening. It's still sub-zero at nights, but nights are becoming increasingly short. What used to be the skating rink is one huge pool of water. Anatoly and his daughter Rita are off for a trial run. Another advantage of a Vetka canoe is its small draft. It literally sits on the water surface, navigates over fallen tree trunks and around narrow and shallow channels and any puddle or any flooded area. It's the duck period. The village is getting ready for the passage of ducks, and you're going to hear hatchets being used all over the village. The folks are carving decoy ducks from alder. This man is an acknowledged authority on the subject. Grandpa Ilya is how he's known in the village.
Вот так. Примерно делаем на Связяево.
Born and brought at Bakhta, he spent all his 82 years here. He only left the village on the Yenisei during the war.
Предельитель птиц фауны СССР. Уточку будем разграживать. А речные норковые утки. Сейчас. Таким искусством я не занимался. Попробуем. Так, ну что, начинаем, да,
Как, конечно.
Так, ну все.
To be on the safe side, they called in Grandpa Ilya.
Под цвет утки делаешь. Острохвост у тебя этот, связем красится. И черношеев. А самая лучшая, красивая утка черношеев. Он как прилетел сразу и комком садится. Только что-то вот до сих пор надо красить, вот до сих пор. Ну, да. На черношеев что походил. А у моего там было всего, он караулил ездит, караулил две утки всего было. Один вот такой маленький был, понял? Второй как гусь, огромный такой. И к нему гуси садились, к этому чучелу гуси садились.
То есть на всех, да?
Да хватит тебе меня снимать.
On May the 9th, Victory Day, the village comes to life. It may well be the one day of the year when Bakhtar residents feel themselves an integral part of Mother Russia. Nearly all of them did not directly participate in any war effort, but during the war their fathers or grandfathers were fighting along with the rest of the country. On this day, every villager will call on the two surviving World War II veterans to say hello and thanks. They are Anatoly Khokhlov and Ilya Plotnikov.
Дорогие ветераны, дорогие односельчане, дорогие ребята, сегодня мы празднуем большой всенародный праздник, 60-летие Великой Победы советского народа над фашистской Германией.
Уважаемый Илья Афанасьевич, поздравляем вас с 60-летием Победы. Пусть годы мчатся, не беда. Врачует время раны. Я не понимаю, Васенька.
Пусть годы мчатся, не беда, врачуют время раны, и пусть уходят навсегда невзгоды и туманы. А что нам для души светло, пусть остается с вами. Желаем в этот день того, чего мы сами.
В чем дело, что кричал? Ура! Кто что может, тот и орал. А большинство кричали ура. Я говорю, что случилось? Кричу ура, победа. И я поднял, ну давай тут, все. Потом, так, наверное, полчаса времени Сталин начал говорить, поздравлять с Днем Победы. А он по-русски плохо не так сильно говорил. На утро вышли на улицу.
Уже пришли, наверное, гости, накрыла теща стол для них, но посредине Енисея на прочном якоре жених. Ты знай, невеста, знай, волжанка, не без тумана жизнь порой, но свято верь ты в сердце друга, и друг воротится домой. Кораблик-барочка, 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 два островка. Стоит туман над Енисеем, пути дороги не дает, За 3 часа до Красноярска остановился пароход.
On the night of May the 10th, the Yenisei did a push, as they say. Not the debacle yet, just the initial shift. The river will never start moving on the first attempt. It's not uncommon that there may be people on the ice when the push happens.
Мы-то пробежали, прошли с отцом хорошо, а там вот это, это жили Николай Ярков, там Полинка, все были, много людей были. А они там через за берегу стали переходить, а они все как тронут туда, и они все в воду. И только их спасали тут в воде, через торс. Да, все мяло, все мяло. Ну и прошел там метров 100-200 прошел и стал.
Such are the memories of grandmother Sarah. This year, the Yenisei behaved differently. Thank God there were no people on the ice. The river did not push far. It did make quite a few cracks in the ice and threw plenty of ice on the shore, and only then calmed down.
А вода, она больше и не привод. Он, наверное, по сухому и пойдет. Вот тебе вода вся. И вся, и подвеска его теперь будет стоять 3-4 дня. Когда оттуда прикатит, он с силой придет, толкать будет. О.
Anatoly and Sergei depart for a Vesnovka or spring expedition immediately after the Yenisei makes its first push. In a day or two, it will become slushy beyond the point of no return. The men have to cover 15 kilometers. They travel lightly thanks to the deliveries they did in the wintertime. The narrow track ramp pathway is strong enough to support their weight. The dogs are trained for life in the woods since early age. The dogs are closely watched and tested. Trappers need future hunters and helpmates. So far, the dogs have been on their best behavior. Well, so far, so good. This spring expedition is all about living on the river and stocking up some fish and fowl, mostly ducks. A few years back, Anatoly and Sergei built this small shed. They'll spend a week or 10 days isolated from the rest of the world by spring floods. They'll be able to return home only after the debacle. Whenever there's a patch of water free of ice, they'll put down fishing nets. The morning razor-sharp ice is not a problem. It melts away in an hour or so. Everyone here depends on fish for subsistence, humans and dogs. But it's in springtime that you can really store up some. While burbot is a winter staple, in spring it's the pike that comes forward. The importance of pike is deliberately played down. People say, there's no fish these days, just a pike. Of course, what you regard as good fish here is salmon, taimen, lenok, and grayling. There are also whitefish class delicacies such as muksun, chir, and melma. This here happens to be chir, which means we're really lucky. It's a good omen. Pike, perch, or nerfling, which are regular daily fare, are regarded as black fish. They're also cured and bloated and stored up to feed the dogs. Each dog consumes up to 200 kilos of fish every year. The flood is at its highest point when the mouths of the Yenisei tributaries get jammed with ice. Then the entire area gets flooded. On occasion, Taigog gets flooded not only with water but also with ice, and huge fir trees could be easily cut down by sharp ice flows. There's only last year's ice left near the shed. It's the ice that developed back in the fall when the river turned into a minor creek so shallow you could walk across it. In spring, when the area gets flooded, the autumn ice will partially rise but still cling to the roots of the bush with its outer side for quite a while. It's wise to keep away from the autumn ice. It can break away at any moment and overturn the canoe. Spring floods open the path to the north for thousands of migrating duck flocks. It's time to put the wooden impersonators to work. Of course, after the hardships of winter with its snowstorms and snowfalls, the men are enjoying the sun and the water and the fish and the fowl. It's lots of fun, but it's not just a holiday. The advent of spring sees food stocks nearing depletion, and everyone is a family to think about, and it needs to be fed. High-level floods cover the bottomland of the Yenisei tributaries, forming multiple small lakes locally known as levee. Migrating ducks love those stopover and feeding grounds. The men will put their decoys in place and hide nearby in a willow bush. And for additional camouflage, they will use last year's dry grass. Nature's facilities are used by a variety of ducks. River ducks are represented by noble quacks, pintails, and teals. Diving ducks are predominantly golden eyes, garrets, or scaups. Here is Mr. Garrett for you. This is how he's trying to get a bride. It becomes clear why there's a saying, to parade like a Garrett. A powerful instinct that drives the ducks up north is crossing here with a no less powerful human instinct for survival. This is the 1 week of the year during which there's a chance to come by the fowl that will last until the fall. 2 sacks would be enough for the family. Ducks are smoked and cured, also stewed and then canned, to be enjoyed during the summer when there won't be any other meat to speak of. At dawn, the men will check the fish nets, process the catch, and get some sleep for a couple of hours and resume shooting. So much for the week-long spring expedition. On day 8, floodwater begins to disappear visibly. The radio in the shed announces. Yes, the ice is on the move. The Yenisei has hit the road. For the village, this is a great event, eagerly and long awaited, but always right out of the blue. This summer pavilion was built a long time ago to while away the time waiting for steamships trying to get here in bad weather. Over time, it developed into a great observation point and a sort of a club for the villagers.
Мы вот маленькие пацанами-то были, как на уроке идут, как начал, грохотать Енисей. Просто срывались и бежали. Учителя ждали, потому что это была радость для нас. Поход Енисея, как долго его мы ждали.
every Bakhta villager, it's a must to watch how the Yenisei resumes an active life. The entire life of the residents is linked to the river, and the river has been closed for almost a month. Spring snowstorms are followed by the disappearance of roads. It's like the winter road melts away, and the summer road is not ready yet. The ice drift is an eagerly awaited turning point in the way of life, marking the transition from life in winter to life in summer. Everyone is waiting for the river to clear up, for the summer road to become operational, a new road, a new life. In a couple of days, the midstream section is sufficiently clear, but the shore ice is still in place. Some people find it impossible to wait any longer, and the most reckless ones go out into the clear waters. Whenever the river would open to start its trek north, it used to be a tradition to scoop some water and wash one's face. Also, they throw pieces of bread and thank the Yenisei and rejoice that they have lived to see the river opening. The North offers a tough but simple and clear lifestyle to the local residents. When you live in accordance with a life pattern established by Mother Nature, you seem to develop a sense of superior meaning, a feeling of serenity and calm, and being fundamentally on the right side of things. There are lots of things still to be done. Northern nature allots some time for each of these, but precious little to be sure. It's a challenge to make the best of it.